that time. And it was about the original McDonald's down the street that they're kind of doing a little bit of work on down there, and there's a stop order on it and stuff like that. So I wrote about that back, I think it was like 1987 or 88. It was a long time ago. And back then, when I was a kid, I grew up right down the street from that McDonald's, and it didn't have the golden arches at the time. It actually had pink flashing arches. They weren't gold. I don't know, anyone remember that from Downey? Okay, good. A few people I saw nodding, so that's a good thing. So anyway, that kind of started me as far as like getting a little more into the history of Downey and stuff like that. But my history goes back even farther than that. So when I was a kid, I used to walk around for walks with my dad. And as we'd be walking through the neighborhoods, my dad would be like, there used to be orange trees all around these, where the houses are. And I was like, really? I'd be looking around thinking, wow, there's orange trees where all these houses are? And then some of the houses still had orange trees in the front yards. So I would look at those and you could see them lined up, and I'm like, oh, really? They're still lined up in these front yards around Downey. So I knew I was in an old orchard. And then I started looking even more, and I could find avocado trees lined up, and I'd find, there's some other trees. I can't remember the other trees. But anyway, I'd see the trees lined, and I knew that was an old orchard tree from that spot. So that's kind of my history part, as far as like my early stuff for history in Downey here. And then after that, in about 2010, I figured, you know what, I'm gonna do a little step farther. I'm gonna put together a nonprofit, and I put that together, and that's where the Downey Conservancy started about 15 years ago. Thank you guys. In fact, this is our 15-year anniversary coming up, and in August we're gonna have a celebration. So keep your eyes out for that on our socials, on Facebook and Instagram, and you'll get some more information on that. If I remember right, the date is August 9th, and it's going to be in the afternoon. We don't have all the plans set for it yet. But keep your eyes out for that. Live band and everything. As far as like the Downey Conservancy goes, when I started it in 2010, I was just really thinking, you know what, I just want to promote the city's history and all that kind of stuff. And as things progressed, things got bigger, and we started doing celebrations of legacy businesses around Downey. Let's say Stocks, for instance, over on Imperial Highway. We had I think it was their 50th anniversary party there, or 60th, I can't remember. We did McDonald's 65th anniversary. That was, I think, 5 years ago now, because I think they're 70, if I remember correctly now. And from there, it's like, we're just kind of, putting more together now as far as like programs go. I have a walking tour coming up at the end of the month, actually, May 31st. It's going to be at 9 o'clock. So if you're interested in tickets for our history walk of downtown Downey, that's going to be on our Downey Conservancy. So the downeyconservancy.org, and that would be our website. You can purchase tickets on there. Okay? So anyway, without further ado, we got Alan Hess here tonight. He's a great author. He's authored 22 books, if I remember correctly, right? 22 books, including Ranch House, which features Downey homes in there, and also Googie Redo. All right, so he's written 2 of those big books. Googie Redo has Harvey's Broiler / Bob's Broiler right on the cover. In fact, I have the cover here. I'll pull it out for you in just a few minutes as soon as Alan comes up. So you ready, Alan? All righty.
Thank you. Always nice to be in Downey. I do love Downey. It has a great deal of meaning to me in my work over the last 40 years or so. And so to be here on this beautiful evening, in this beautiful site, in this beautiful house by Roland Cote, who was a really important traditional Spanish colonial revival architect, along with Wallace Neff and Paul Williams and other great architects. There's such a great tradition, legacy here in Southern California in all kinds of styles, and in city planning as well. There was such creativity over now the past 120 or 30 years, and we still don't appreciate and really understand what it all is. which is why I was glad that the Conservancy invited me to come and return to Downey, look at my slides again, think about Downey and what it means. And what I have come to the conclusion is that Downey is a microcosm of what makes Southern California great over the last, again, 120 or more years. Because when we think of the history of Southern California, I'm an architect. I think in terms of buildings, but those buildings represent something like LAX and the theme building. What does that represent? It represents the aerospace industry. From the early days of Donald Douglas in his factory in Santa Monica in the 19-teens and 20s, all the way through to the creation of the of Apollo and the space shuttle, again here in Downey. I'm going to touch on some of these things here in Downey, but I'm assuming that all of you know what is here. But what I want to try to do is kind of put it in a larger context, why Downey is important. So, think of Southern California. Think of the types of buildings that instantly come to mind. And what do they mean? Again, the theme building, aerospace, transportation, the Capitol Records building by Weldon Beckett. What does that mean? The entertainment industry, music, movies, Hollywood. The architecture, especially residential architecture like Richard Neutra's Lovell House as well, representing a whole tradition of creative architecture, which I would like to emphasize was not imported into Southern California. It was created, inspired by Southern California, by the aerospace industry, by the climate, by talented architects who wanted to get as far away from Europe as they possibly could and come to sunny California and experiment with new ideas about architecture. And then, of course, there is popular culture, roadside architecture, drive-ins, coffee shops like the Downey McDonald's as well. Well, I say that Downey is a microcosm of that much larger story of all of Southern California, because you do have where the space shuttle and the Apollo were designed, created, built, etc. Such an important part, one of the legs of the stool of the Southern California economy. In the lower right-hand corner, if you can see that, those are the blasters. Musically, Downey represents such an important part of the creativity in the entertainment field. In the lower left-hand corner is a detail of a ranch house, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in a while. But again, a Southern California invention, but you have here so many great examples of that. And then, of course, the McDonald's. We have to keep coming back to McDonald's. All that it means, not only to Downey, not only to Southern California, but to the nation and really the world as well. And those golden arches and the neon and the red and white tile, all of these capture something special, important, unique about Southern California. So that's why I was excited to be able to come here, give this talk a little bit more about this. So I'm going to talk about those individual elements, like aerospace. And I'm going to start off with this group of surfers, probably sometime around 1930 or so. The guy on the left, his name is Jerry Voltee. The guy on the right is Duke Kahanamoku, who was Hawaiian, who brought surfing to the United States. A very important figure culturally, in terms of sports, recreation. He was in the movies also. He was a major figure. But again, what represents Southern California culture more than surfing? But Jerry Voltee and Duke Kahanamoku were friends. This is probably in Newport. where they would go surfing. But Jerry Volte was not only a surfer, he was also an engineer, an airplane engineer. And he founded Volte, which became Volte Consolidated, became North American, exactly. There's several iterations of that company. But where was it? It was right here in Downey. Now, again, what's important about that? It was a factory. It was part of the economy, again, an important part of the American economy, innovation, experiment, also helping to win World War II as well. The lower photograph, if you can make that out, is Henry Ford's River Rouge plant in Dearborn, Michigan. This was an enormous factory complex, which again represented the power and might and innovation of the automobile industry in the American economy. But in terms of aerospace, airplanes, the Consolidated Volte factory here was the architecture of factories, not only for their functional purposes, but in their very appearance and what they symbolized as well. All of these things are important. And again, you have examples right here in Downey. Of course, the